Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher, each week on Turning of the Wheel podcast. Hello and welcome to Turning of the Wheel. My name is Chris Flisher. As you know, this is a show about astrology, art, and spiritual adventure. And as we are on this gigantic ball swirling through space, we are certainly on an adventure of the highest kind. I've got a great guest coming on in about 2 seconds here. I want to remind you, first of all, about my newsletter, which goes out every Sunday afternoon. And in it, I do a mundane overview of what's going to be happening in the week to come, as well as all the individual signs, so you can find your information there. I encourage you to always read your sun sign and your rising sign to get a more accurate picture of what's going to be happening in your life for the week to come. I encourage you to support me if you can. I'm not asking you to, but if you can, it'd be nice. A little cha-ching. It doesn't hurt anybody at any point in time, just to help keep the wheel turning, as they say. So today we're going to be discussing, the topic of the show is going to be the end of the year as we know it, and I have none other than the wonderful Michael Lutin in New York City, who's going to be joining me, and I'm very pleased to have him on. It's always great fun to have him. He's a great astrologer, very astute, and got great ideas about what's going on. So without any further ado, let's get him on. Here's Mikey.
Hey, Chris, thank you for inviting me on here.
It's always great to have you on, Michael. I always get a chuckle out of you. You're such a great spirit, and it's always fun to hear your astrological ponderings as well as your humoristic insights into the world. So
I'm trying to be humorous.
Right.
Not easy.
As I say, when I say I'm trying, I always say I'm very trying. So
you're not as trying as you used to be.
That's right.
Hey, you know what though, really? You have to have distance. You have to think of these things on a long-term basis.
I do agree.
I pretend that I'm sitting on one of the beaches on Pluto in my beach chair with a big telescope watching it. And if I do it that way, I have a much different vision of what's going on. Yeah. But if you don't do that, if you're too close up to the events, naturally you're going to be scared out of your mind because it's insane and it's not going back to normal. I'm not going to say it's not going to go back to normal soon. It's never going to go back to normal.
Right.
And if we get that into our heads, we're good.
And it shouldn't go back to normal. I mean, change is a constant, as we all know. And I think you make a very good point. It's that the long view might be much different than we think of right now. We don't know where we're going to go. We don't know how this is going to unfold, our year, our life, our planet, our politics. We don't know any of that until we get some distance on it. And once we get that distance, it might not be that bad. We don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic to make, lemonade out of lemons, but I do believe that there may be some silver lining in this cloud somewhere.
It could be just silver plate.
It could be silver plating, right.
We have to be careful because nobody knows exactly the direction of this turn. And that's what it means to go from Capricorn to Aquarius. Mm-hmm. It means to go from a planned and ordered system to a apparently random event that requires spontaneity, creativity, and the fight for freedom. But we don't know where this comes from, and we don't know why it's happening, but we know it is happening. The system that we knew has been shattered.
Right.
For good or ill, it has been shattered. And there is nobody on earth who can completely figure out where this is going. And you want to look at where it came from? I'm studying that now because I'm writing about it. But I could go back to 1055 when Pluto was in Capricorn. Huh. And the first Pope to order the first crusade. He was the first Pope to order the Christians to kill Muslims. And that was in the end of the end of the 1,000 years.
Well, that's a pretty interesting observation, given that those themes are somehow apparent again.
Well, you see it all the time throughout history, but this time it's different
Mm-hmm.
because Pluto has now been in Capricorn. Pluto has now been in consciousness, I should say, since it was in a conscious awareness, I should say, since it was discovered in 1930. Planets do not manifest in their highest vibration when they're first discovered, because they're too recently in the collective consciousness,
Right.
and
Right.
without enough experience. So
Mm-hmm.
the first time we know was not a great time. And now we have a chance to look with perspective on what Pluto in Capricorn can do, because it is the second time that we have seen Pluto in this cardinal space where it was when America was formed. But this is the second time we've seen it go over its own node.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only the second time. So we do have some perspective in World War II, which has not even come out yet. It's only now that certain World War II truths are being omitted, and we're getting more perspective. This is why I'm saying we can't say what's going to happen next week or next month. Look, it's taken 80 years or something, 70, 80, almost 70 or 80 years to get a perspective on World War II that's more objective. And the further back you go, the more objective you can be. So we are in a complete space of sliding down a slippery slope that we do not know where it's going. And therefore, not only do you have to have faith, but you've got to have long nails to dig into the wall you're sliding down, because we are in a very unusual place, and everybody's got an idea. Everybody has a right to an idea of what it means and where it's going, but nobody can predict completely the outcome of this situation, because it's going to demand complete spontaneity and a total overhaul of not only the American system, but a world system.
Yeah, and it certainly is clearly evident. And I think, reconstruction is the major theme of Pluto. And I think the reconstruction is it's a way to wipe the slate clean, and to paraphrase or to use a common popular term, drain the swamp is actually not a bad idea if it actually happens, because we need to have that start over. We need to have some sort of a reconstruction of old ideas. Now, what that looks like, we don't know, as you say, so we can't really necessarily fear it yet. We don't have any reason. We may have our emotions may get wrapped up because we're sort of in this bubble very closely, as you mentioned earlier. We're too close to it right now to understand what it looks like. So we don't really know. But we are in a time of radical change, and this was what was brought about. This was kind of what we saw with the Bernie faction as well. Bernie was also a change agent, and if he had gotten into there, who knows how things may have been differently. But he didn't. He didn't. Then this is where we are, and this is what the change is all about. And we have to either, adapt and embrace and move with it, or, be forever doomed, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to tell people who are having a Pluto transit, this too shall pass.
Yeah, no
kidding. But that's ridiculous when you're in on it. But one of the great visions I have of the Pluto transformation, and only again in the view of history, there's an island called Surtsey off Iceland that came up. The Surtsey came up as a volcano, and I think it was in the 50s or 60s. But it was really scary and terrible when it came up, because it was a huge volcanic explosion that came out of nowhere, out of the sea, and created this blackened lava island that looked very ominous and scary. It was exactly Pluto coming up from the underworld.
Yeah, wow.
And it was nothing but blackened lava. When you look at Surtsey now, which is 65 or 50-something years afterwards, it's beautiful. Huh. Spores have landed on that island, so it's now a bird and floral sanctuary. So it's an incredible Pluto story of how fertility comes out of devastation. But you can't tell that to someone who's having a Pluto transit, because you can't say, this is going to be a beautiful bird sanctuary in your life. That has to be experienced. So we have to be where we are with these Pluto things, and they are tragic. There's a loss of life. There's a loss of a lot of things that people held dear. And eventually, fertility reigns. REIGNS.
Yeah, no, it's just like a forest fire. You know, when you see a forest fire that wipes out a whole crop of trees or whatever, and then you see the new saplings coming up shortly after, it's the same kind of idea. I do believe this is part of a cyclical part of the nature of life that we go through these periods.
Well,
I do believe it's a pendulum that swings as well.
I agree. But tell that to Bambi's mother.
I know it. Okay.
Okay.
I know
and also, the Earth is in a different space now from what it was in all these other transits.
Of course.
Because the Earth itself geologically is in trouble. We have more pollution, more radiation, so much sickness from the radiation and from the bad things that we've had in our food and the poisons in the water and everything. So human life is in more of jeopardy than it's ever been. You know, I read today that there's three famous Google computers, artificial intelligence, that talk to each other. And recently they've started talking to each other. I've got to make sure this is accurate, but I did read this morning. That three of them are now talking to each other encrypted. So that we don't know what they're saying.
Oh my gosh, that is scary.
Well, there was a movie.
There was a
movie back in the 70s called The Forbin Project with Eric Braeden about a giant computer. It was so prophetic. There was a giant computer that was created and put into Fort Knox, so nothing could ever open the door again. And then they found, and it was called, I forget what it was called, but then they found out that Russia also had one. And eventually the two computers started speaking to each other and decided that humans were not capable. So they actually got humans to be enslaved to do what they felt was better for the planet.
Wow, that's a scary thought.
That's not impossible.
No, it's not. It's very likely. I mean, we're probably right on the edge of that happening. I mean, that could actually happen. I mean, and would it be a bad thing if we were to change our course and do things the right way? I mean, we may be, a lot of automation is taking our jobs away. So what else do we have to do but, correct the planet and correct the mistakes that we've made to date?
Well, the day my toaster starts telling me what to do is the day I'm going to leave this planet. But it is inevitable that artificial intelligence is a factor that we must now consider as, I want to say a citizen, but within 20 to 5 years, probably not even that long, computers and artificial intelligence will have rights.
Oh, they will make decisions that we have nothing to do with, and that can be very good, especially if they're programmed correctly or if they have, a good intention at their core. I think that's probably safe to say, but it is scary. I mean, in the Internet of Things these days, when you talk about your toaster, I mean, that's not that far fetched.
Well, we're not. We're too old in the 21st and 22nd century sense to appreciate or to look upon artificial intelligence without fear and trepidation, because we're losing jobs and we're losing relevance. But as human beings become more interactive and cybernetics are more of a part of human life, that fear will disappear. So artificial intelligence, if society doesn't bomb itself to death, will have a greater impact on evolution of the species, because I don't know what they're going to do about the poisons in the atmosphere, and I don't know what they're going to do about population growth, and I don't know what those other geological factors are going to have, what kind of impact they're going to have. But we have so much more of a challenge to survive in the coming years than we've ever had, not only politically, sociologically, and psychologically, but also because of the actual condition of the planet. So, as usual, young people do not fear any of these things because they consider they're normal. They happen since they were born. They just get on with their life. They fall in love. They get married. They have babies. It still has impact on the humanity, but the future always belongs to the young people who don't really give a damn. They just keep living.
Right. But there is an element of natural selection that's involved in that because we have adapted, we will adapt in some ways, hopefully, to any changes that come along. That's happened with all species. If, there's famous scientific studies about birds who lived near coal mines and they were white at the beginning, and then because of the coal dust they ended up becoming black, and then eventually over time they were born black. I mean, there's that natural selection has the ability for us to adapt. Hopefully we would adapt to that situation.
I think that we have to look forward to this coming year, not as, is it going to be better? So many people write to me and say, is it going to get better? We can't look upon that because we are at the brink of the Pluto South Node transit. This is a dark moment, and we have to go through this to get to the other side of it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we should look for, is it going to get any better? Because when people say that, they mean, is it going to be easier for me?
Right.
I think, some people will thrive. Some people will have prosperity. Some people will have health. Some people will have illness. Those things do not change. Those things do not change from one period to another.
Yeah. And nothing good ever happens without the element of this change possibility. I mean, we have to experience it. We have to go through it in some capacity. Otherwise...
I want things to be better. I want to have, good health and prosperity and everybody, to love each other. I want that also for this coming year. But those are the things that we have to, on a personal basis. You know what I was thinking? I should finish that sentence. On a personal basis, we have to look around also. I was looking at my life and life of other people that I know. And everyone I see and everyone I talk to is living under, not forget the political in terms of the country, the world,
right.
In their life. They are somewhat enslaved to a regime they detest.
Oh, yeah, I think that's very true. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
On a microcosm basis, whether it's a job with a lousy boss or some situation that they're committed to, and for their own security, they cannot escape it.
Mm-hmm. They're in a vicious cycle, yeah.
They resent it. So the country is in that, on a collective basis. It didn't matter if Hillary got in or Trump. The regimes are different. The sense of tyranny is different because the perception is different from one group to another. Mm-hmm. But some groups really sincerely believe that had Hillary come in, there would be a greater one world government tyranny, some things that we didn't even expect to have happen. So there would have been a vast number of people feeling resentful of that regime as there are now with the Trump regime.
Oh, there was no happy ending either way to this. That's very true. It was always going to be a polarized situation. I do think it's too early for us to tell what is to come. I think the idea of the long view is really necessary. We needed to have something change. There is a lot of, the last 8 years have been so bound by obstruction and political game playing that it's been very frustrating to see that progress has been stunted in every way. So this really does totally take that train right off the track and puts it on a whole new trajectory.
People are awake.
Yeah, we are.
But what I have been saying is don't say who's the winner, because there can be no winner in a society, international and otherwise, that puts people in places of leadership, and then those people are removed by the same people who put them in. Mm-hmm. If we are living in an era and in a society where that happens, then there is no winner of any election. Right. Because no winner, quote unquote, of any election is safe in his or her position if he or she is in jeopardy of being removed by the same people who put them in the first place.
Well, that's sort of a check and balance that makes us safe in some ways. It certainly provides a counterpoint to what could happen. Everything is always in jeopardy. Everything is always in flux. There's no question about it. So it does make sense that I don't think things would have been any different. I think we would have been. I mean, granted, you'd have a whole other body of people who would have been happier at a different outcome simply because of the way this whole thing unfolded. But I'm not sure that we would have been any better off given what the history was there. I think you're right. It would have been polarized.
Chris, we don't even know what really happened.
No, we don't.
We don't know if this was a coup or a counter coup.
Yeah, I know.
We don't know, depending on how your level of schizophrenia at any moment. We don't know whether a coup was being planned by the Hillary regime in its own way to orderly take over. You have to listen to all the crazy people on the street, because the craziest homeless person sometimes has insight in his or her own mind that sounds crazy. I've heard from, you don't know how many crazy stories you can imagine I hear.
I can imagine.
One was that this is a space war going on, that there's a war in space for the planet Earth, for control of the planet Earth. Now, it sounds insane, but I don't discount anything now.
No, I don't either.
As crazy as I tell this story all the time. When I first came to New York, I was, really broke. I was trying to, make my life and learn astrology. And one day I was walking up 31st Street. I was going to pay my phone bill. In those days, we had phones that you had to, So I was walking up 31st Street, and in my mind, I was thinking, I have to pay the phone bill and the rent today. And I'm walking up the street, and all of a sudden, from an alleyway, a homeless patient who just been let out of Bellevue, because they let him out in that neighborhood, a homeless schizophrenic patient jumps out from the alleyway and 2 feet in front of my face says, "Well, do I owe you money?"
And what did you say? Oh, yes, of course you do.
I was stunned at the ability of a person to pick up someone's vibrations who didn't have proper limitations and didn't know how to, have boundaries.
Right.
But I've had tremendous respect for the craziest people, because sometimes they even speak in analogies and metaphors about what's really happening. So when some crazy person says there's a battle for the control of planet Earth, well, yes, there is. But it may not be out in space. No, but there's certainly a battle for the control of Earth going on in major political parties, in major political groups, with people whose names we will never know.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you on that one. I do believe that myself. I think that, sometimes these people who seem to be on the fringe, as you mentioned, have insights that we can't quite comprehend, and because they don't follow the same paradigm as we do, we think that they're crazy.
And the people who are doing what they're doing,
yeah,
we don't know who they are, because they're not tap dancing in the spotlight.
No, they're the marionette behind the scenes with the strings.
So we do not know what's happening at all. We just know the zeitgeist has created a disruptive situation that has people very, very on edge, which is what Aquarius is all about.
Well, it is about, but it's also got a certain element of goodness to it, because it has that element of being the sort of the global purview. So it is, I believe, it is a global concern, but I also believe in the positive aspects of that going forward.
I would never want to live on a planet that didn't have Aquarius as one of the signs, because it allows freshness.
Yes.
It allows fresh air to be brought into a stagnant situation.
And think of two of our famous Aquarian presidents, Abraham Lincoln and Franklin Roosevelt, who could have, both of them, hugely monumental influencers in the course of the nature of this country and where we went and how we are today. So we
my interest in Aquarius is not simply, but one of the reasons why I love it is that it provides genius to enter into any system.
Yes, no, I totally get that. It is.
It's the sign of the genius. It's the person who says, Why don't we just put this over here
Hmm.
and just move this over here? And nobody else ever thought of it. So that's what's happening now, but it disturbs the status quo, and we're not going backwards.
We're not going backwards, which is an irony if you think about it, because the phrase that got everybody excited was "Make America Great Again," and that implies a return to a time when we had coal mines and steel mills and stuff like that. We know that that's not going to happen, but that is the idea. I think the underlying theme of achieving something great is worthy. I think that's not a bad sentiment per se.
We have to pursue liberty and allow human beings and artificial intelligence as well to pursue their own version of happiness. We have to allow that, but we also have to become responsible human beings, because when we formed this country, the founding fathers had phenomenally futuristic and progressive ideas, but they had slaves and they killed the Indians. We have to pay for that.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of quid pro quo in the long run for that. I agree with you there too. Yeah, and I think that perhaps that may be what is unfolding in a very slow manner. I know
Exactly.
that I know the change had to come. It had to come. There's no other way around it. But I think, looking back at it historically, growing up in the '60s, I would have thought that, when we saw, segregation come to an end, we saw feminism come to light. Those were major positive steps forward that I thought were harbingers of what we would see down the road further. And then when in 2008, when Barack Obama got elected, I thought, oh, great, here we are. We're seeing the manifestation of that Pluto-Uranus conjunction in back in the 60s. We're seeing that now that we're coming to the square of those two. And yet,
Right. And this is also white backlash.
yeah,
It's just part of a big picture of growth. When Regulus entered Virgo, I truly believe that began a 2,000-year cycle of the supremacy of women, and it's been coming for the last 30 or 40 years. I believe that's the case. That Virgo is the common woman, and when the Queen Elizabeth made the new rule that if they had a girl, she could still, if the firstborn was a girl, she could still be queen. That was a big change in English policy, and so it was the beginning of the supremacy of women. That could be 30 years from now or 40 years from now, but it is definitely what's happening. That the role of women is increasing. This current administration is a major resistance to that, but it's not permanent. It will not last to have the white male supremacy run the world. It's not going to happen.
no,
And
I
this
don't
is
think
true.
so.
This is true even in Muslim countries. Women are going to have a greater voice and a greater freedom while still respecting the rules of the religion and the meaning of what all the religions are. I believe that the Catholic Church, I first said 200 years ago, I don't think it'll last. I mean, from now, I don't think it'll last that long. I don't think it'll take that long. The Catholic Church will survive here I am, I'm Nostradamus today. I believe that the Catholic Church will survive by removing the Trinity and the crucifixion as the mainstay of the religion, and elevating Mary as the Earth Mother,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
and having Mary run things, take over the corporation. Now, what that's going to mean for the College of Cardinals is they're going to have to shorten their hems and start wearing pants. But it's an inevitability for the Catholic Church to survive, because there are a lot of reasons. We don't have to go into them right now. There's a lot of reasons why the Catholic Church, which is already secretly using women in their liturgy and their services, they will have to eventually have women cardinals. They will have to eventually have maybe a female pope, but they will definitely have to do something about the Trinity as an idea and as a story that has historically been challenged tremendously. And not only that, but it doesn't jibe with the times.
It's not valid any longer.
But it worked for 2,000 years because that was Regulus in Leo.
Yeah. it's not valid anymore. We're in a different time and place, and it has to make sense that we have to move on. We're talking today with Michael Lutin, the one and only Mikey Lutin out of New York City. We're talking about the end of the year as we know it. It's not as dire as we think, but we're going to be back in about 2 minutes, so hang in there. We're going to continue our conversation, and we'll be right back.
What is your destiny? Where are you going? What is your real purpose? Do you know? Do you want to know? Of course you do. It's your duty to yourself. We are all here for a reason, and we all have great potential. Discover all of this and more with a professional astrology reading. My name is Chris Flisher, and I can help you. Discover your strengths and work on your weaknesses, and live your life to its fullest capacity. Based on your birthday, birthplace, and birth time, an authentic astrology reading will allow you to live your life to the fullest and reveal your true purpose. Only real astrology can give you real information. It is your destiny, and it is your path. Write me at chris@chrisflisher.com and book a reading today, or call me at 978-393-1036. That's 978-393-1036. www.chrisflisher.com.
Astrology is the science of spirit, and it can serve as an invaluable aid in making the difficult choices in life and seeking truth in all the directions we choose. It holds the potential to allow each of us to evolve to our highest potential. It is the logic of the universe, the code of existence, and the pathway to true wisdom. It is our duty to draw from it the instructions for our lives and to live them to our fullest potential. As the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed.
As the world shrinks and our barriers come down, diverse cultures are striving for harmony, balance, and peace. To ease the transition, we need to expand with color, light, and tolerance. Now, you can become a global citizen and embrace the color and clear spirit with the divine artwork of the mandala. Mandalas are a timeless artistic offering for creating unity, harmony, and peace. My name is Chris Flisher, and I've spent years creating mandalas, and they are now available online at www.turningofthewheel.com. Come and experience the world of color, form, and function with t-shirts, coffee mugs, note cards, and limited edition prints. These vibrant, lively paintings and products express optimism, oneness, and spiritual balance for all who use them. www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. And enter a world of possibility and color.
Okay, we're back. We're talking today with Michael Lutin. We're talking about the end of the year as we know it. Obviously, a lot of us have a lot of information on our minds. A lot of us are very worried about where we're going and what we're doing and all that. But we are trying to find somehow the silver lining in the clouds, and I do believe it's there. We do have to make a change. Change is necessary. This is a radical change from what we've been used to, granted, but it is perhaps a wake-up call of sorts that gets us out of our complacency, gets us out of our Facebook feeds and out of our cell phones, and forces us to take action. I think that's a large part of it. We have been seduced by that, don't you think?
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to say this before I forget this. I'm a great proponent of freedom of speech, and I've always thought anybody should be able to say anything as long as it didn't threaten another human being, that they should be able to say what their views are. I do not have, because I have the kind of perspective I have, because I'm sitting in my beach chair on Pluto watching it, I have mixed feelings about both sides of this coin. I have mixed feelings about the other possible outcomes that this could lead to, but I am fairly dispassionate about it, and therefore I do not defriend people from my Facebook page because they talk for or against Hillary or Trump or any of the other things. I do not tolerate people who say things that are really horrible threats or vile, obnoxious, obscene things about other people. But anybody is welcome at my table, no matter what their beliefs are, and anybody is welcome on my site. I must say that I will delete many posts. I do not kick the people off. I do not defriend them. But if I think that the things are particularly not appropriate for my page, or they're sometimes just dumb, I will delete them. That I don't delete the people. I delete it. It's my page, and I have a right to decide what's on it. But I don't knock people off because their beliefs are for one side or the other, but I don't allow people to get into terrible fights on my page. But I believe that anybody should say whatever they want. If you absolutely think that Trump is an insane maniac, you could say it on my page. If you think he's the best thing that happened to the United States, if you think Hillary was dangerous, you can say whatever you want on my page. I believe that people should say whatever they want. I was raised, I'm older now, so I was raised at a time when we could joke about anybody's origins. There was no political correctness when we were kids.
Oh, I know all too well.
We used to joke about it, and we used to have, and it was even in grade school when the holiday season came around. We did not have a lot of Muslims. We had one Muslim kid when I was in grade school, but we didn't have a lot. But it was mostly Christians and Jews, and we used to make the menorahs, and we used to make the manger scene, and we would have a Christmas pageant and a Hanukkah pageant. There was nothing that was said about either group that was frightening or threatening or dangerous or demeaning. Something has happened, and one thing that Trump said last week that I kind of liked. He said, "You know what? I'm going to say Merry Christmas." And I like that because we're not supposed to bring anything into the public anymore. So I don't know what his other policies are going to be, but I kind of thought that was very refreshing, that we could actually go back to not an old way, but a more casual way of relating to each other. Now, I know a lot of people say that hate has been unleashed in this country. I don't know if hate has been released, but a lot of repressed feelings that people have never shared. Everything is out in the open now. This is what I love about Aquarius. I said a moment ago. It's amazing how it brings fresh air into a stagnant room. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening.
And when you do that, when you open the door and when you open the window to get that fresh air, there's going to be some dust that comes in with it, but it's also going to be fresh air. So you have to take the good with the bad in that analogy.
Very true. I mean, I live in New York City, so you can imagine when I open the window. But I don't know if we have any fresh air anymore. I think that's what's going on in the world. There's some stuff in the air that's incredible. There was the other day in Paris, there was a pollution alert.
Yeah, I saw that. Gosh.
They said some kind of particles, and I know somebody who's very into the whole poisoning of the air thing. He's had his own air tested in his neighborhood and on his fender, and things that have landed on his fender from the air, and there were high concentrates of aluminum and barium, and I don't know what the hell is happening in the air, but something is happening in the air. And I think that's one of the elements we have to become much more aware of. And as an astrologer, I think that we should, this is what I want to do. I really would love the astrologers to start putting Earth in their horoscopes. Now, I know it's theoretical that the Earth is supposed to be symbolically in the sign opposite your sun. I don't know if it really is because we're standing on the Earth. But in geocentric astrology, I think we should say the Earth is a planet too. And as astrologers, we should become much more aware of what they're doing to this planet and what we're doing to this planet. Mm-hmm. And I think to include this planet in our horoscopes shows how much pollution is in our horoscopes.
But how would we address that? How would we do that? I mean, I do believe that I understand completely what you're saying about the pollution. I think the jets and the all the vapor trails that we're seeing are probably contributing to the air. But how would we accommodate Earth as a part of our conversation, other than the fact that we talk about Earth signs, for example?
Well, I don't know. Suppose we all pretended that the Earth was opposite our sun sign. Mm-hmm. Because that's theoretically what a lot of people have said you could do.
Right.
So if you're a Leo, you have Earth in Aquarius.
Right.
If you're a Virgo, you have Earth in Pisces. If you're a Taurus, you have Earth in Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly. I'm just formulating this.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's an interesting idea.
I think as astrologers, we need to take into consideration and make more of our agenda an insistence on the whole world, and that includes the leaders, that our world not be as polluted. I don't know how we could fix this now with 80 zillion people on the earth, but I do believe that that would be something that we as astrologers should band together, in addition to the ideological questions of separatism and division, and realize we are a unified human bunch. But also, what could we do as a world community of astrologers to make everybody much more aware that this Earth is a planet too, and it's contributing to the poison in our own horoscopes? I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I think it's true.
Well, I mean, it certainly is worth discussion, because I just wonder how we would interpret it, how we would ascribe it. What sort of an archetype would we be as a planet? You know how each planet has an archetypal sort of character?
Oh my God! I just thought of that. You mean what we would symbolize in the horoscope?
Yeah. Do we symbolize the head, the heart, or what do we become? I mean, that's one of the challenges. But I think it's worthy of discussion, and where we are is actually really a embracing of the present moment. Because if we think of the other planets in our neighborhood as symbolic and representation of what is to come, the Earth would probably represent what is presently right now, because that's where we are right now. So that's one way of looking at it. So that brings in sort of the idea of being fully mindful and being fully present and all that, you know?
Very true. I mean, I don't really even know what I'm saying when I'm saying it, but I do believe it. I've been trying to formulate something in the last several months of how I could help, or at least what I could contribute to awake us all up as astrologers to the fact that the Earth is a planet in the world horoscope.
Well, I think the reason it hasn't been considered is because we see ourselves as here looking out. Really, what you're talking about is symbolically, it is sort of like holding up a mirror to ourselves. We would have to have maybe the mirror, maybe the reflection is the archetype that we're looking for. And if we are destroying something here, we need to look in the mirror and clean that mirror very, very carefully.
Yeah, I don't know how we would do it. I don't want to involve myself in heliocentric astrology at this point, because I'm just too enmeshed in the geocentric, and I did look into heliocentric several years ago, and I always thought it was interesting, but it was not as personal as I was interested in, so I didn't really pursue it. But there is something to be said for we are contributing to the vibration of the zodiac.
Absolutely. I think everything is reflective. So for every action, there's a reaction. If we are generating something, there's bound to be some cause and effect down the road. That's true with everything we do. We live in a dualistic world. You bounce the ball my way, I bounce it back. It's a giant ping pong match.
In other words, the signs, Leo, Virgo, Gemini, Sagittarius, they have a certain vibration that when we have planets passing through that point, those vibrations come down to Earth,
right,
to us. But also, the way we react to those vibrations sends messages to that sign and contributes to what the vibration of that sign is. It's our actions that create as much vibration as what we get from the signs when planets pass through them.
Yeah, it's reciprocal. It's a reciprocal.
It's just what you're saying. Yeah, it's just what you're saying. So I don't know exactly how we can do this, but we have to look around and see what is being done to this world. And again, it's when profit is more important than human relations.
That seems to be the underlying thing, and that speaks to the idea of capitalism in general. I mean, does capitalism really serve a viable function in the long run? I mean, you think about it. Every year, every product on the face of the planet has to keep getting better or different somewhere. Whether it's your laundry detergent, or a box of crackers, or the latest car. Every year, that has to change because people don't want the old. I am of the opinion that I would love to be able to go out and buy a 1967 Ford Mustang and still have it be a new car and not have to worry about it, But we can't. Those are all gone. That's plain obsolescence because we have to keep moving. Eventually, you would think that something would come to a screeching halt. How many times can you reinvent Tide laundry detergent, for God's sakes? You know what I mean? You can put a new label on it and you can say new improved forever, but eventually. And why are we not happy with just making... If you're a cracker company and you have annual profits of $10 million a year, why aren't you happy with that? Why do you have to have $11 million the next year?
Because the guy next to you has come up with something that is so competitive, whether true or false, that makes your particular product obsolete, except for the people who don't want to change. But the nation, the world, is so unhappy with itself on the inside that it's seeking constantly for some novelty on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the reason.
I think that's reason. I think that's very reasonable. I think that's part of the allure of social media. I think that people are drawn to it because they are dissatisfied inherently in themselves, perhaps, and they're looking for something else. And that becomes a very reflective conversation, you know. In some ways, it's very helpful. I agree, and I'm on social media myself. But other ways, I think it can be destructive because it forces us to always be in this sort of competitive state with other people. Oh, so-and-so's on Tahiti. Wow, why am I not in Tahiti? Or whatever.
I'm sorry.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, no, that's all I had to say. But you know what I mean. It does put that sort of comparison shopping or comparative dialogue on the table all the time.
Competition is ubiquitous in humans and in all species. Mm-hmm. There's a certain the lowest part of Scorpio, the reptilian part of us, is survival, and so that's always operating. There's the need to survive, that you'll have food and shelter, is going to create competition among beings. But when that competition overrides the humanity of each and every one of us to help another person. There's a homeless guy who's lying on the sidewalk. You know how cold it is in New York right now?
It's terrible.
There's a homeless guy lying on a little thin, I don't even think it's a mattress, under a huge quilt, so no one will see his face. For obvious reasons, you can imagine how humiliated he is. And I went by yesterday, or the day before yesterday, and many people were passing. Sometimes people would stop and they would look, but they'd keep going. And I did it for once. I went back to my apartment. Then I came back again when I was going out. And I shouted into the blanket, "Hey, is there anybody in there?" And the guy said, muffled, said, "Yeah, there is." And I said, "Can I get you a cup of coffee?" "Can I?" So I knew he was saying yes, but he was embarrassed.
Oh.
So I went to the diner across the street. I didn't have much money on me, but I went and I got a hamburger, French fries, a slice of pound cake, and a coffee.
Oh, nice.
And I went back and I said, and when I did that, of course, it took money out of my pocket, but I felt better doing it. And as I did it, 3 people approached with a little bag of coffee, food, and money for the guy. So I attracted that. Not that I'm so wonderful, but I just couldn't bear to see it, because I just know what it would feel like to be that embarrassed. And he didn't want anyone to see his face. He just took the food under the blanket. And when there were 2 other people, the 2 women came and they gave food, and one said, "There's a little money in here." The crime of that guy has to be in that space. I don't care whether he's a drug addict or what. I don't think he was. He didn't seem that way. But what's happened is that there's become such a vast imbalance between the desire to survive and the desire to show humanity. And I'm competitive in my work. I want my work to be seen and read and bought. Of course I do.
Right.
But I do not ever cutthroat my colleagues in any way or try to beat them out, because I don't think that's humane as astrologers. So I try to help all the astrologers that I know who I think their stuff is good and I can help them, or if they can help me. So that's what I try to do.
Well, that was kind of the theme of, Stronger Together. I mean, if you are with like-minded people of your same ilk, and you're all, you're scratching my back, I'm scratching yours, then we would all succeed. That was the general census perception of what we were trying to achieve. I thought that's
However, it's happening in astrology too. Pluto is on its south node for everybody, and there are people in astrology who want to make a major control effort to control everything. Mm-hmm. That's happening in every industry because of the fear of being without, the fear of loss, of that one's power will be lost, is ubiquitous. Nobody wants to be at the mercy of anybody else. But Pluto in the south node creates the fear that you are going to lose your power.
Well, I guess it does. I mean, I can see that. I don't personally feel that way. I mean, I worry like everybody else worries, but I don't feel as if I'm losing power.
Did you hear that? You worry like everybody else worries. Everybody else worries also because that's the nature of this transit. People worry about being at the mercy of either society or other people.
But I think that's always been the case. Don't you think, man, we are smart people. We as a species, we always worry. We always have, always will. The guy is like, where am I going to get the tiger steak tonight when he goes out hunting?
No, I don't agree with it. I think that if we have a certain inward strength, then we don't worry because we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing, and the future will unfold.
So you don't worry?
I don't worry too much now. No, I'm very busy right now, and I'm very intense, and I have a lot of personal issues going on. But I have a staunch belief that if I'm doing the right thing that I'm doing in terms of our work, if I'm doing that and I'm doing it diligently and the best that I can do it and try to live a better, healthier lifestyle, I have nothing else to fear.
Oh, I do the same way. I'm the same. I think if I'm well intended and I'm following my heart's path, I feel I'm comfortable doing that myself. I understand that. But I think that as a nature, as a species, we are going to have certain innate fears that come just through that's what keeps us going. I mean, if we didn't have a sense of fear, we wouldn't seek out food. We wouldn't seek out shelter.
Well, yeah, probably. But the truth is, one of these days, we're all going to drop off the conveyor belt like the rest of the cream pies in this factory. And they'll stick a cherry on our nose and plop, you go in the box. And once you face that, you don't really have any fears or worries because underneath it all is the fear of dying.
Well, it's kind of like, exactly. And this is going to happen. So either you accept it and you go on from there, it's a very liberating experience to accept that.
Well, that's in your good moments. In my good moments, I realize that death is, inevitable, and that I don't know what I would do without myself. I don't know how I'd get along without myself. But the thing is, and when people say, what's the best way to go? I say the best way to go is to send somebody else wearing your name tag. Because I love being alive. I really love being alive. I love it. But I understand that life is about the death you will eventually have.
Mm-hmm. And that in many ways is a new birth. I believe that transition is a birth of sorts. So we're just transiting from this living, breathing entity to another form. I believe personally that we go to another. We don't even know what that's like yet.
And we're here.
It may be fabulous. They may have fat-free food, and they have everybody may be beautiful, and everybody's walking around having a great time. We have no idea what to expect.
But we are actually, we're kind of lucky in a way. As uncomfortable and as the future is going to be, the immediate future, we are lucky in a way to be born in a time of revolution. As the colonists were, as the French were in the 18th century, we are lucky to be part of an upheaval in society that will change for the better.
Right. Well, there's a certain innate excitement about that if we can embrace it in that way and not look at it with dread. I think it's the abundance of dread that gets people down, and it's self-fulfilling. I think a lot of it is self-fulfilling. And I don't know if that's driven by the media. It certainly seems as if a lot of it is, but it can't be. There is something about the change factor that is great, and in that revolution, usually great things come up as a result.
Eventually, they do, and I think that the media. They're not setting out to scare us. Their scary stories are reflecting their own anxiety. Those are the stories they choose. Because the whole world is living with so much anxiety because it's so outward oriented. With so very few of the people on the planet are inward oriented and have an unshakable inward faith. Those people are not worried about all of the terrible things that are happening and could happen.
No, I think that's true. I think that's true. I mean, the idea of being fully present, sort of the Buddhist underlying under idea, is a constructive one because it does force us to be in this moment. It forces us to be in the moment, and if that's all we really have, so what would be the value of going anywhere else? That's really probably how the best way to achieve this sense of happiness and
Exactly. I think if you are occupied with the if you are occupied with the well-being of others, you can't worry.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's a very noble cause because I think in the act of giving, like you did the other day with the homeless man, there's a great reward for him as well as for you.
Great. I felt great doing it. Yeah. And I was kind of the last cash I had on me, but I have other money, but it did make me feel good. And then I felt guilty. I thought, oh, I'm just like some person, some white person who does something. The guy was white also, but I said, just some rich white person who did one little tiny nice thing. But I do believe that if you, first, of course, you have to take care of yourself. You have to. But if you are occupied with the well-being and happiness of others, you can't worry. Sometimes when I'm on the subway, which I hate doing, but I do it. Sometimes when I'm on a crowded subway, I sit there and close my eyes. And I think, what would this car feel like if everybody who's riding to work or home at this moment, if everyone in this car felt completely happy, what would it feel like? And actually, I start to feel happier because the whole feeling in the car feels different, just thinking that. If you can occupy yourself with thoughts like that, there's no time to be nervous.
It's true. I mean, I think it does take some practice. I think people, especially in an environment like New York City where you're bombarded by so much stimuli.
Listen. People think New Yorkers are so hard and thoughtless. If somebody sees somebody lying on the ground, they're not going to pass them by. They're going to go back, look down, and say, "Get up!"
You can't lie down here. This is a sidewalk. No, but the idea of your idea of that idea, I think generally people, as you say, are dissatisfied. There is this sense of wanting something better. That is probably a natural. That's a natural motivator because if the roof did not leak, we would not fix it, right? So the roof is leaking.
I agree. I totally agree with it. But the fact is, people were fooled by advertising ever since World War II was over to believe that life could get easier. That was the whole thing about buying new detergent and everything. That your life is going to be easier. There'll be more leisure. But the leisure that we got from it did no good. It only made us more anxious.
It made us more anxious, or it forced us to look for things that were not useful uses of our time, like acquiring material goods and filling up storerooms with worthless gadgets that we buy.
And to watch sitcoms that are not funny.
Right.
But we're supposed to laugh.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. I remember listening to I think it was Kurt Vonnegut was talking one time.
God.
The author, Kurt Vonnegut, was talking, and he said, people, they look out and they look at themselves through this lens, and they never really ask themselves, what am I doing here? Why am I spending my time on this? But yet they look at the television as if that's their social circle in some way because they see a pleasant family there with a father comes home and, like in the old days, people, Leave It to Beaver or whatever, somebody comes home and they see, and these people become their family in some ways instead of the real community. I think what's lacking more than anything is this sense of people feeling too isolated. I think this is why the social media has taken off in such a large way because it provides a community, even though it's virtual, of some kind.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other subject.
I know it
is. The isolation comes from the fact that families have disintegrated, but that's a whole other thing.
Oh, that's a huge topic. But that is something that is an underlying problem, and I think that's why the whole marketing piece, like Madison Avenue and whatever the advertising people are pushing, that is to fill those voids. This is why we all running around trying to buy things that we want or we think we need. It's really kind of unusual. But we have certainly come through the most unusual year in ages as far as what we're looking at, where we're going. And I think the uncertainty has got everybody completely flummoxed and they're scared, understandably, because we don't know what tomorrow may bring. We don't know. And there's reason perhaps to consider that. But by the same token, the around that corner could be something fabulous. I have clients who come to me and, I often see people who come to me, and they probably come to you as well, in miserable relationships, and they don't know what to do. They want to get out of the relationships, or they have a terrible job, and they're afraid to make that step because what is familiar, even though it's uncomfortable, is easier to take than the prospect of making a change. The change is hard. The change is what's hard. That's what they would. But they might not know. They may make that change. They may leave that relationship. They may quit that job and wonder why it took them so long to get there.
But right now, people are still digging their nails into what is known, like clinging to a wall.
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah.
And they look down and they see nothing but darkness and emptiness, which is what the future is all about.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't see that it's a turn. They see it as an endless drop.
Yeah. It is.
And so they're clinging madly. That's what Pluto and this node is. They're clinging madly to the shred of the known and power that they have.
Yeah.
And that's just what is. And that's where people are very stuck, and you have to have compassion for it. And we're all in the same boat. But the future is never visible until it happens.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't even look at my own transits.
Huh, that's interesting. You just sort of go with it, huh?
Well, what am I going to do? I do the best that I can today.
Well, no, but I think if you know if you have a theme that's coming up, and you know how themes are, they can go either way. I think knowing that allows you to be proactive in the choices that you make.
Well, yeah, I suppose, but it also looks different on paper.
Hey, Michael, we got to go. I could talk to you for hours. What's going on with you? Are you going to be? Are you have anything you want to promote? Your website?
I want people to read Boom. That's what I really want them to do. Is to read Boom. It's on Amazon. You can get a PDF. You can get the Kindle version. You can get a free Kindle reader if you don't have Kindle. And I also have a audio lecture that I did on Boom. Boom is called Boom, the Horoscope of America, Life, the End of Life as We Know It, but not the end of life. Don't worry, but don't laugh about it either. And I believe that I wrote this I want to just quickly tell you, I wrote this in July of 2016.
Okay.
And 3 publishers wouldn't touch it. After offering me to write about it, in the end, they would not touch it. And I ended up having to publish it myself. And so So the thing is that it really is kind of a dark thing because it's only the first volume of a series that I want to do on this revolution.
Huh.
And it's called Boom. BOOOMM exclamation point. I think I want people to read that. But, people are asking me for the next volume yet, but I'm not ready to do it. I'm still writing about it, but that's what I think I want people to see, what this is really going on.
Yeah, and maybe that'll give us
it's on my website, which is just michaellutin.com.
Good. That's great. Well, we will certainly make sure people look into that. I have looked into it myself already, and I think it's going to be a fascinating discovery. I do think, it is an evolutionary story. It's going to go through its dark cloud. We're going to go through a dark tunnel, but there is light at the end somewhere, and we're hopeful we'll see that sooner than later. Anyway,
okay.
Yeah, it's great, Michael, to talk to you today. And hopefully I'll see you at one of these conferences coming up, and we can chat some more. Always great to talk to you. I love your insights, and it's always a great pleasure. michaellutin.com. Get that book, Boom. It'll light up a light in your life somewhere, and you'll be able to
It'll turn off the light.
Well, by turning the lights off, you actually get to see a different perspective. So
thanks a lot.
Take care, Michael. Take care. Good to see you again. Talk to you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher. To schedule a reading with me or to order artwork, you may visit my website at www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. Or you can call me at 978-393-1036. Thank you. And as always, be open to possibilities.